After weeks of rethinking and redoing my list, I've finally ranked the top 10 biggest clubs that are currently playing in England's non-league pyramid. I will be including the performances of now dissolved clubs that have since been reformed, such as my own club, Hereford FC, and I will be going back to the formation of the Football League back in 1888, so there might be some names on this list that you haven't heard of, or that you don't think should be here. Please be aware that this is based on my own opinion, but feel free to correct me in the comments if you think I've got this wrong. So let's start with number 10, which is Bradford Park Avenue. Bradford Park Avenue isn't a name that many football fans would have heard much in recent years, but from 1908 to 1970 they were a regular in the Football League. While they have been a member of the Football League for less time than some of the teams who narrowly missed out on the top 10, Bradford Park Avenue's inclusion was based on the fact that they spent 3 seasons in England's top flight, albeit before and after the First World War. There aren't many non-league teams that can boast about playing in the top flight. In fact, they're one of only 3 on this list who have done so. Bradford lost their Football League status in 1970 and haven't returned since. These days they're playing in the Northern Premier League Division 1 East, which is the 8th tier of English football, where they're averaging attendances of some 400 odd. But they were in the National League North as recently as the 2022-23 season and have been in free fall since. Let's hope they can turn their fortunes around over the coming years. In at number 9 is Halifax Town, or FC Halifax Town as they're now known. Halifax Town, formed in 1911, were members of the Football League from 1921 all the way through to 1993, when they were relegated to the Conference. They won promotion from the Conference in 1998 and spent a further 4 seasons in the Football League before once again dropping out in 2002. Halifax Town spent most of their time in the Football League in the 3rd tier, though their last appearance at that level was all the way back in 1976. They were put into administration in 2007 and as a result of financial struggles were liquidated in 2008. FC Halifax Town were formed that same summer and began life in the Northern Premier League Division 1 North, and they've been on the way up ever since. They've been playing in the National League since their promotion from the National League North in 2017, and their best ever performance was a 5th place finish in 2019-20, though the final league table was decided on average points per game after the outbreak of COVID-19 had suspended the football season. Halifax have been pushing for a return to the Football League in recent years and are averaging attendances of just under 2,000 at their Shea Stadium. Will we be seeing them playing in the Football League again soon? In at number 8, I've gone for Torquay United. They were formed in 1899 and they first won promotion to the Football League back in 1927 and remained there, mostly in the 4th tier, until they were relegated to the Conference in 2007. They did swiftly return to League 2 in 2009 but lost their Football League status once again 5 years later in 2014 and haven't been back since. In fact, they have been bouncing around between the National League and National League South over the last 10 years or so. Torquay United are currently pushing for another promotion from the National League South, where they will be looking to prevent this bounce between the 5th and 6th tiers of English football, and considering their recent decline to the 6th tier, they're still getting good crowds, averaging around 3,500 at Plainmoor this season. It's likely that we'll see Torquay in the National League again next season, but how long will it take them to return to the Football League this time? Is the gap getting too big for them now? At number 7, I've gone with York City. York City are currently in a title race in the National League, so could be a Football League club again soon, but for now they're one of the biggest clubs in the non-league pyramid. They played in the Football League for the first time all the way back in 1929 and remained there until 2004 when they were relegated to the National League. They did briefly return to League 2 after winning the National League playoffs in 2012, but were relegated once more after just 4 seasons, then immediately dropped into the National League South where they stayed for 5 seasons. And now it looks like they're beginning to turn their fortunes around again. Their York Community Stadium opened in 2021 and holds 8,500, and they currently get crowds of just under 6,000 on average, which is really good for the National League. In at number 6, and this was really close between Scunthorpe United and York City, but I think the iron edge it just. I was struggling to decide which of these 2 clubs are historically bigger, so with very little between them, I used their best ever Football League finish as a tiebreaker, which favoured Scunthorpe United. Scunthorpe United, like Torquay, were formed back in 1899, but didn't make it into the Football League until 1950. They've bounced around between the second and fourth tiers of the Football League and have enjoyed 8 promotions in that time, though have never made it as far as the top flight. Scunthorpe were in the Championship as recently as 2011, but after spending the majority of the years since in League One, they suffered 3 relegations in 5 seasons, which saw them plummet into the National League North. They missed out on an immediate promotion back to the National League after finishing second behind Tamworth in their first season in the 6th tier, then defeat to Boston United in the playoffs saw them stuck in the National League North for another season, after most people expected them to cruise to the title. This season, they're once again in the race for promotion, but they have slipped down the table after a poor run of form totally undid their almost immaculate start to the season. Scunthorpe United are undoubtedly one of the biggest clubs to ever play in England's 6th tier, but will they be stuck there for a little bit longer? Their Glanford Park Stadium holds just over 9,000, which is easily one of the biggest in the league, and they currently average an attendance of around 4,000. Number 5, I've gone for Hartlepool United. And Hartlepool were a Football League club from 1921 all the way through to 2017, when they were relegated into the National League on the final day of the 2016-17 season. The Pools spent a number of years in England's 3rd tier, and although they didn't make it up as high as the 2nd tier, I've put them ahead of Scunthorpe and York, simply because they spent quite a few more seasons in the Football League than the previous 2 entries. Hartlepool did briefly return to the league in 2021 through the National League playoffs, but their second stay was brief, seeing them relegated once again after just 2 seasons. Hartlepool United's Victoria Park ground holds just under 8,000, and they're currently averaging crowds of around 3,500 in the National League. This year they're having an underwhelming season in the 5th tier, though with the league being so close they aren't that far off the playoffs, so they could have an outside chance of promotion this year.
For the second time in this game, has managed to latch onto the...
At number 4, it's Rochdale. And Rochdale are the first team on this list to have spent more than 100 years in the Football League. And they even managed a League Cup runners-up medal in 1962 after losing to Norwich City in the final, which is an incredible achievement for a club of their size. Formed in 1907, Rochdale were invited to join the Football League in 1921 after the creation of the 3rd Division North. They spent most of their Football League seasons in the 4th tier, but did enjoy several promotions to the 3rd tier and recorded their best ever finish in the 2014-15 season when they narrowly missed out on the League One playoffs. Unfortunately, despite following that up with several comfortable seasons in League One, they weren't able to match that performance again, and in 2021 they were relegated back to the 4th tier, and after suffering some financial issues they were relegated from League 2 in 2023, ending a 102-year stay in the Football League. This season, the Dale are very much in with a chance of making the playoffs, with several games in hand over most of their promotion rivals. Their Spotland Stadium holds just over 10,000, but they're only managing crowds of around 2,500 at present. Will we see Rochdale back in their rightful place in League 2 soon, or are they destined for a long spell outside the Football League? While this list was extremely difficult to put together, the top 3 didn't really change much, and on the bottom step of that podium we have Southend United. Southend United were formed in 1906 and played their first Football League match in 1920, and like Rochdale they spent just over 100 years in the EFL. They enjoyed their most successful spell in the early to mid-90s, where they spent 5 seasons in the old First Division, which is now the Championship, with their highest ever Football League finish coming in the 1994-95 season, when they ended up 13th. They did return to England's 2nd tier briefly for the 2006-2007 season, but were immediately relegated back down to League One. Southend bounced between League 1 and 2 from 2007 to 2019, but suffered back-to-back relegations in the 1920 and 2021 season, which saw them lose their Football League status. Southend United have struggled with staggering debts over the last few years, with a lot of concerns for the club's future among the supporters. But despite this extremely dark period, they're managing to remain competitive in the National League. The Shrimpers' Roots Hall holds almost 12,500, and they're still getting crowds of over 7,000 on average, which is incredible levels of support considering the off-field issues at the club. Southend are a massive club, so I'm hoping they'll return to the Football League soon, but there are still 2 bigger clubs lingering in England's non-league pyramid. This might be quite surprising, but number 2 is Oldham Athletic. And Oldham Athletic are one of only 3 teams on this list to have played in England's top flight, and the only club to have done so in the Premier League era. They are the first and to date only team to have fallen all the way from the Premier League to the non-league pyramid, but are still an incredibly well-supported club, who, let's face it, belong in the Football League. Like Rochdale, Oldham played in the League Cup final, losing to Nottingham Forest back in 1990, and the following season they won the Second Division Championship and were one of the founding members of the Premier League. The club was formed all the way back in 1895 but joined the Football League in 1907. Their first of 2 stints in the top flight was between 1910 and 1923, where they even won a runners-up medal at the end of the 1914-15 season. And other than their brief second spell in England's top flight, they spent the majority of their time between the second and third tiers. Oldham's stay in the Football League ended when they were relegated from League 2 in 2022. Their Boundary Park holds 13,500 and they're currently sitting in the National League's playoff places with average crowds of almost 6,000. If I was making this list based solely on recent years, Oldham would easily be ranked right at the top. But then there is one other non-league club who boasts a far more impressive record than them. Let me know if you saw this one coming in the comments. And number 1 is, of course, the 2-time FA Cup winners, Bury. Bury might currently be lingering in the 9th tier of English football, but they have by far the most impressive history of anyone else on this list. Founded in 1885, they entered the Football League in 1894 and won promotion to the top flight in their very first season. They remained in the top tier of English football until their relegation in 1912, and it was during this top flight period that they won both of their FA Cups, in 1900 and 1903. Despite not playing in the top flight as recently as Oldham, Bury did have another spell in England's top tier from 1924 to 1929, but have spent the majority of the following years between the second and third tiers. Bury never actually suffered relegation from the Football League. They were instead expelled at the beginning of the 2019-20 season after a late purchase of the club had been rejected and left them unable to pay off their outstanding debts. After falling into administration and having their application to play in the National League North rejected, Bury were left without any staff, players or a league to play in. In 2022 though, the Forever Bury supporters group managed to acquire the club's trading name, history and most importantly their Gig Lane Stadium. Bury have since merged with Phoenix club Bury AFC and are currently playing in the North West Counties League Premier Division, which is the 9th tier of English football. With a fantastic group of supporters behind them, I'm sure we'll see them back towards the top end of the non-league pyramid over the coming years, and who knows, they might eventually find themselves back in the EFL. Despite being in the 9th tier, they're still seeing an average attendance of just under 3,000 at Gig Lane, with their highest this season being almost 6,000 on Boxing Day. If I was to base this on the last 20 to 30 years, Bury would find themselves a lot lower down this list, but their 2 FA Cup wins and numerous seasons in the top flight is enough to see them into the top spot. I so badly wanted to put my Hereford FC into this list, but with little over 30 years in the Football League and only 1 season in England's second tier, I couldn't really justify that decision with anything other than bias. But what did you think of my list? Let me know if there are any teams you feel I've missed, or feel free to simply tell me that I'm wrong in the comments section. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to my channel and I'll see you at Chesterfield's SMH Group Stadium this weekend.